So, welcome to May's edition of Working in Sustainable Technology. And today we are going to be looking at the topic of e-waste and green IT solutions. E-waste pretty much refers to any form of waste that has a plug or a battery attached to it. And as we're continually digitizing and electrifying the world around us, the problem of how we manage this e-waste is ever increasing. And as that volume of e-waste grows and grows and grows, sadly, the percentage of it being recycled is, I think, only around 17%. So we've got a lot of work to do. Add to this that the manufacture of new electrical goods is a huge contributor to carbon emissions. Figuring out how we can build them more cleanly, how we can extend their life, and then how we can reuse or recycle them more efficiently is going to be a massive problem in society over the next, 5, 10, 15 years. So today we're joined by two people who are really making strides in that area. First of all, Scott Butler from Material Focus. Material Focus is a not-for-profit focused on getting the UK to fix, donate and recycle their electricals. So he'll be speaking to us first and sharing with us the work that his organisation are doing. And we'll then be joined by Zahid Khimji from Klyk. Klyk are a sustainable IT provider helping businesses to adopt a circular approach when it comes to their IT equipment. My company are users of Klyk, and I can tell you it's great. So without any further ado, Scott, do you want to take the floor?
I'm going to talk you through what we do, and particularly around waste electricals and behavior change, which is a big part of our activity. So Material Focus, we're an independent not-for-profit, and our mission is all around making sure that the value in old and unwanted electricals is captured, and that can be the use value, so making sure that they're used as long as they can be. If people don't need them anymore, that they can be donated or sold on, but also the material value at the end of their working life. And that material value is probably underappreciated because a lot of people don't really think of tech or electricals as anything with a plug, battery and cable. It is made of some of these valuable materials that are essential materials for the green economy that the vast majority of us are aiming for. So we work in three main areas. We have three pillars of activity. We have an insight strand. Everything we do is evidence-led. And there we look at a variety of things from consumer awareness and engagement and understanding, all the way through to quite technical research, looking at things like critical raw material recovery, looking at where products flow and how they operate through the system, and where we're losing them to things like the kitchen bins, to landfill, illegal export, and those sort of activities. So we've produced a number of research reports that are available on our website. We have an investment strand, and here's where we focus on making it physically easier for people to do what we want them to do, which is to reuse and recycle their electricals. So we've funded over 50 projects that have helped 12 million people in the UK get better access to reuse and recycling solutions. And then we have our inspiration strand, which is the communication campaign that we've been running that we call Recycle Your Electricals. Believe it or not, we spent a long time coming up with that name. But it's a sort of Ron-Seal approach. It does exactly what it says on the tin. And that's a combination of marketing, and I'll show you some of the stuff that we've been doing there, but also in getting this story of electricals in as many places as possible so that people are seeing it, feeling it, tasting it everywhere, and therefore it feels like a normal activity, a normal behavior. So it's a quick fire sort of run through some of the stuff that we're doing, quite visual, but it just gives you a flavor for that. And then obviously in the breakout, we can talk a little bit more about how I came to be into this sector and the kind of skills that we're looking for as an organization. We're quite a small team, there's 12 of us, but I believe we punch very much above our weight, pound for pound. I think we're an organization that's delivering. So some numbers. What is the context of all of this? What's happening with electricals? Around 2.2 million tons of electricals are bought every year in the UK. 498,000 tons of that are being sent to approved electrical recyclers. So that's the good news. There is a good, strident, active industry that's innovating all the time and is recovering an awful lot of materials from the electricals that go to them. But there's a lot of stuff that isn't going into that system. So recent research that we did revealed that over 880 million items are sat unwanted and unused in our homes. And this is the thing that we've been calling the drawer of doom, or if you're lucky enough, a garage of garbage. if you've got big enough for those outside of the cities. But this is basically stuff that we all do. This is one of the things that we lean into a lot. Is it's a common thing. We all have that drawer of remote, a DVD remote for a DVD player that went 10 years ago, cables for things that we're not quite sure what they charge, but we hold on to in case we find that thing that they charge. So that's 30 per household, and it's anything from things like toothbrushes through to quite valuable tech like smart devices. That we've been lucky enough to upgrade our laptop, and we keep the old laptop because we haven't got around to clearing the data from it and all those other things. But that stuff actually could be really useful, particularly in an increasingly, as our world gets increasingly digital, there's a lot of people who are excluded from that digital world. And that's actually becoming quite important, given that we have access finance, work, education, health, all these things are increasingly digitized too. There is a lot of illegal activity, like any industry. There's a good bit of the industry and a bad bit of the industry. So there was over 180,000 tons of illegal exports, and this is stuff that's unfortunately going to places that we don't want it to, because it's a sort of economic route for getting stuff out. There's value in it, but it's value that's being recovered in ways that it shouldn't be. You also have, particularly when metal prices can be high, you do have theft of particularly large domestic appliances, which are mainly steel, and you can get you can push it into a route where it's not necessarily under the auspices of local authorities or environment agencies. And we're throwing away a lot of electricals. We're putting them in kitchen bins. So that's over 100,000 tons of electricals are being thrown away. And that includes some of that stuff where we're not quite sure what to do. We don't know what value it's got. I'll either put it in the drawer or I'll put it in the bin. And there's three behaviors that are going on. People recycling it, which is what we want. People binning it, which is what we don't want. People holding on to it. Ideally not, but at least we've got an opportunity to capture that at some point in the future. And there's also this business electricals, and business electricals are far more than what you first think them to be. It's not just IT that's in businesses. If you think of every office, you've got kitchen areas where you've got microwaves, kettles, and all toasters and all those other things as well. So research that we've done has revealed that 200,000 tons a year of business electricals are being thrown away as well. So that's the sort of scale of the challenge, but also a scale of the opportunity. The good news is that 80% of the public, I think it should be higher, but 80% of the UK public think recycling is a good thing. So we're pushing at an open door in some senses, but only 40%, 40% still bin their electricals rather than recycle them. In a sense, that's what we're aiming for, is getting that number up to be, to hit that level of engagement around recycling as a whole, to get electricals delivering around that same level. I'm not going to go into too much detail here, but this is the model that we work with, which is basically a behavior change model developed by a guy called BJ Fogg out of Stanford University. The basic principle here is that if you make it mentally easier and physically easier for people to do things, then you can start nudging them into behaviors that you want to make. So this is things like hope. So a good thing, we're very positive, unapologetically positive. We can make a difference by recycling our electricals, by getting the valuable materials back into the economy rather than in landfill or incineration. There is a bit of fear sometimes. We've got an increasing issue with battery fires, for example, from portable tech. But it's also about making people feel good and belong into that place. But the important thing as well is making it easier. And at the moment, it's still not as easy as it could be for many people to recycle their electricals. Hence why we have our investments strand, which is about making it easier. So if I may, hopefully this will work. I'm going to show you an ad that we've been doing, because this wee fellow is a guy that we created called Hypnocat. And he's a hypnotic, psychedelic, techno-loving cat, obvious choice for an electricals campaign. But what we're doing here is trying to cut through the noise. It's a very noisy world, and we're trying to cut through in the best way that we can. So hopefully this will play, and maybe you've seen it, but let's go for that. No noise.
No, can't hear it.
Let's see if there's something in the settings. Oh, we'll move on from it. You can look at it another time. Okay. Anyway, that's a TV ad that we do. So look at that TV ad later. I'll send you the link. It will be in the presentation. But we're also communicating in lots of other ways as well. So you can see here, we've got quite a varied, striking sort of approach to how we're cutting through. So we've got a thing, the one in the middle there you'll see is a campaign that we did called Fad Tech, which was leaning into this thing around air fryers and popcorn makers and Pop-Tart machines and all these things. Many of us have got something that we bought that we're hiding away in a cupboard, no longer using, and it's basically saying, look, if you don't need that anymore, release it. We've had projects with the Gadget Show on Channel 5. Vapes is all the numbers that you've seen on vapes are my fault. I'll hold my hand up. That's the research that we did. And we've used that to really cut through and talk about electricals as a whole. We've got a giant toaster that we've had in Westfield and is now in Sparks in Bristol, which is an absolute pain in the backside. Don't ever make anything big and then think about without thinking about what you're going to do with it afterwards, because we've been having to move that thing around and yeah, deal with many things. And we also did a partnership with Envision Racing, which is a Formula E racing team who their idea, but they built a Formula E car out of old electricals, and we worked with them getting that message out there as well. So we're basically coming at people from all angles. Using influencers, using social media to drive this. And as I said before, getting this message out in lots of different ways so that people, might see the cat 3 or 4 times and then it connects to them and go, oh, it's a cat, it's electrical recycling. I should be recycling my electricals. And we had great coverage recently this year. We were all across the BBC with a story around the sort of draw of doom, which went on BBC Breakfast all the way through to early evening news and across all BBC radio channels. We had a great coverage around vapes on ITV, where we revealed that 90% of UK retailers who should be taking back vapes weren't taking back vapes, and just highlighting the fact that they're making a lot of money from selling them. They should be meeting their obligations to take them back. And yeah, we go from, all media channels. This is just a flavor of some of the stuff that we've done. So The Sun, The Star, Grazia Magazine, Hello Magazine, through to Radio 4 documentaries talking about inbuilt obsolescence. So it's, across all pieces where we're basically getting this message across. And this is a sort of chart that we use to show that this interest in this issue is growing all the time. So we launched in 2020. And as you can see, just tracking the media coverage, broadcast coverage as well around eWaste, we don't use the word we very often. It doesn't mean anything to anybody in the general public, and we should stop using it entirely. But there you can see that we're on that rise. This trend is happening. More people are talking about it. More people are engaging in it. And we're making it easier, as I said as well. So this is an example of some of the projects that we've run. We've been rolling out bring banks recently, as well as curbside collections in authorities that can do that. Got a nice project in Oxfordshire around the recycling of vapes. The bottom left is a bring bank on the Isle of Skye, so the most beautifully situated bring bank in the world. If there was a competition for that, that would probably win it. But it's just showing you a flavor. And this is as you see, pink is a really strong color for us. We use that color and try and resonate it through all the stuff that we do. And then, of course, it wasn't Ryan Gosling promoting the Barbie film. He was actually promoting our bring banks that we launched in Richmond as well. Very, very nice of him to do so as well. But it's just giving you a flavor for how we're trying to communicate this, raise the profile of this in not an obvious, preachy sort of environmental way. It's just basically trying to get out there that the value in tech and gadgets and gizmos is really important when we're using it, but there's also value in it after life, and all of us can make a difference. And just is some numbers as well, more relevant when I guess you look through the presentation. But the big thing for us is in the last year, we've seen a 6% year-on-year increase in the weight of small electricals being recycled in the UK. And that's 7 million kilos. It's 7 million bags of sugar. It's difficult to scale that, but particularly when you're talking about small electricals, that's an awful lot of stuff. And we're seeing people increasingly starting recycling their electricals, 38%. We've got 44% familiarity with the campaign, and that's from 3-4 years of activity. And we've also got over 1 million people visiting our Recycle Your Electricals website, where we've got a postcode locator on there, which has 22,000 drop-off points. So it's easier than most people actually probably think it is, but we're also working to make it easier all the time. So that's the sort of scale of the whole thing. I mean, I could talk a lot more about it, but we obviously have a chance to do that one-to-one or one to a few later. But hopefully that gives you a flavor of who we are, what we're at, and hopefully you can be advocates for the campaign as a whole after this.
That's fantastic. Thank you so much for sharing that, Scott. That's brilliant. And an amazing study in driving behaviour change at a huge scale as well. So I'm sure there'll be plenty of discussion around that in the breakout room. And now, Zahid, are you happy to share what you're working on with Klyk?
Thank you very much, and great to meet the WIST community today as well. Can you see my screen okay?
Yeah.
Excellent, great. So yeah, once again, thank you for having me, and really good to connect with all of you. So I'm Zahid Khimji, co-founder at Klyk, and I'll talk you through our passion for addressing the global issue around tech waste. And good to follow on from Scott in terms of what he's described with regards to what he sees as some of the larger issues with regards to electrical waste. I'm going to deep dive into a little bit around what Klyk does specifically with regards to tech waste. So our company has been around for a couple of years now, and I will just start with a quick background as to what Klyk provides. We are positioned as the end-to-end tech provider, and we are committed to making circular tech the new standard across our services. We work with modern businesses, and a typical client for us will be working hybrid, and we're very conscious of what the modern business looks like. They're typically working remote and growing, scaling workforces. And we very much see that tech is an amazing and enormous opportunity to adopt the circular model, and particularly around addressing and reducing what your carbon footprint is. And at the same time, whilst you're great for the environment, it also reduces your cost of what you're spending on tech. And the great thing that we see is that whilst we work with businesses, we very much recognize the fact that when businesses start working with us, they sometimes didn't realize that when you make the right choices around what tech you're procuring, how you're using that tech during its life cycle, and also what you do with the tech at the end of the journey, what often is a surprise to them that it's an amazing opportunity to reduce your carbon footprint while you do that. And we'll dig a little bit deeper into that in today's session. Quick background to myself. So my career focused on professional services, working at the likes of Accenture, Deloitte, and PwC. And it was during my career there that I realized that whilst I was able to have, a positive impact with regards to the consulting projects I was doing, at global large organizations, you always often feel that feeling of there's more to what I can provide, and having that opportunity to provide something more fulfilling and give back to the community. And secondly, and again, this comes very much to the background of what Klyk is all about, is seeing that our skill set and the areas of expertise and the knowledge that we have, how can we use that to solve some of the larger, more complex problems that there are, particularly around sustainability. So for me, it's very much about combining my background in cyber and technology and my passion for sustainability and looking to address, that very much issue around, e-waste. So Klyk, in terms of its background, is very much an origins story. And what you can see here on the slide is my co-founder, Asad Hamer, and his background very much complementary to mine, as a tech entrepreneur with the experience of building and scaling businesses. And here you can see Asad with his dad when his dad comes to visit our office. And his dad's background is very much, as a tech engineer. And like many business owners and business operators, we take inspiration, from our parents, from our families, and also very much from our upbringing and background as well. Both Asad and I are from families from an East African background. And when we talk about tech, it's places like East Africa, West Africa, and across Asia, where a lot of the pre-loved and unwanted tech ends up. And you'll see images of this on the news where there's massive landfills of laptops and printers and devices that have been exported and shipped across to faraway lands. We very much want to stop that from happening, and think about the environmental impact that our tech footprint is having. And growing up, here in the UK, we were brought up, from immigrant families where very much the focus was around how can you do more with less? And that's why growing up, yes, we didn't call it sustainability, but that's what our upbringing was all about for us, myself, and many others that came to the UK and went through that immigration journey. So what we see very much is that our tech consumption has been too wasteful and for too long. And like many of the complex problems around sustainability and becoming more eco-conscious, it's not an issue of the future. It's very much a problem that we are facing today. In fact, to add to the information and stats you can see on the screen, the UK is now the world's worst offender per capita when it comes to e-waste. Now, that's us here in the UK, as a developed country with a, forward-looking economy, so much advancement, particularly around tech. How are we the world's worst offenders? And that's what we're here to address. And when you look across let's say the supply chain when it comes to building laptops and producing tech, whether it's the manufacturing, it's the design process, it's the transportation, it's the usage of the device, the carbon footprint throughout that process is very, very significant. And ultimately, when we talk about taking, it's very much the issue that we have today, which is we are taking more from the planet than what we're giving back. And some of the minerals and components that are needed to build the tech, like cobalt, like copper, like lithium, they're either in extremely high demand right now, particularly when you think about things like lithium, or they are in very, very short supply. And that's an issue that we're facing right now today. And a lot of these minerals come from, from Asia and from Africa. So they're, being transported all across the world. And we are compounding the problem because of our consumer decisions, particularly from a business perspective, when the business world is largely to blame, accounting for 70% of tech consumption, that when we have that situation today, which is where the end user, the consumer, is becoming more eco-conscious, wants to make the right choice. But unfortunately, there's that perhaps lack of awareness and perhaps, the lack of drive and support from the manufacturers to offer alternative options. And that's where Klyk comes into it, where we offer those options to provide circular tech solutions. So what do I mean when I talk about circular IT? Well, it's all about that life cycle of taking an organization and a home user through that journey. So I'll quickly talk through this model just to give a bit of insight about what I mean and what does Klyk provide. First of all, at the top, you can see sustainable procurement, making the right decisions of what device are you going to buy. And there's different paths, but it's making sure that all paths lead to green. So for example, if you are going to make that decision to buy a new device, that can be acceptable as long as you've thought through how long are you going to use that device for? What's the asset refresh cycle? What can you do to make sure you're going to maximize the lifespan of that device? We absolutely promote the concept of refurbished devices. And those are devices that could be, for example, bought directly from a manufacturer, where let's say someone's had a device and they've returned it within 30 days, can be a high-spec device, exactly what a business user needs, but offering those different options to make sure that a business and a home user is fully aware of the options you've got to consider refurb and to make sure you've got the device to deliver what you need. The second step to think about is the smooth onboarding. So how do you make sure that when a new joiner starts at your company, when you've gone through that whole investment to recruit the right person to join your company to fill that role, how do you make sure they get that amazing experience of, that lovely feeling of when you're unwrapping your new tech that you receive when you're in a new role, and making sure that that feeling and that positive attitude combined with the fact that, hey, you as our new joiner is also receiving a sustainable device. And that's what our commitment is as an organization, as a mission-led business. The next step is around the proactive monitoring. So we use software to make sure that the devices that are being used are optimized and help team members to stay in flow and able to deliver and achieve the results they need as they do their day job. So those services make sure that that device, whether it's a battery, status, whether it's disk space, whether it's CPU, we can actively in the background monitor the device and then proactively intervene to support the business user to make sure that that device keeps them focused and is ready and able to support what they're doing. The support model, really, really important to make sure that team members have the support structure, whether it's hardware or it's software, to continue delivering their job. And sure, sometimes things do go wrong with the tech. You've got to make sure that there's a support structure in place that team members can reach out to. Number 5, and as you can see in the middle of the slide, it's all about sustainably secure. And that's where cyber protection comes in. And my own background very much around making sure that the devices, the data, and ultimately your brand are cyber secure. So there's some really simple solutions that can be added, whether it's email security to reduce the amount of threats coming through email, such as malware and ransomware, or email impersonation, or it's VPNs, or it's device monitoring, making sure that the device and the data are protected at all times, just reducing that threat and that concern. And then finally, as you look towards the end of that loop and the circular IT model, it's the offboarding of the joiner when they come to the end of their experience at the particular organization. And then making sure that you've considered data security, fully wiping the data that's on a device, you've revoked access of the user to that device, and of course, thinking about what do you do with the laptop and the rest of the tech. Has it truly come to the end of the life? Then recycling is an option, absolutely, but that has to be the last option. Are there opportunities to repurpose the device, perhaps store it and keep it for the next new joiner? If that's not needed, can the supplier of your tech buy it back from you? And that's a service that we offer. Or once the device is fully wiped securely, are there opportunities to donate the device to charity? Absolutely, addressing the digital divide. So many different options to think about, and we're positioned to be the circular IT provider of choice, empowering businesses to not only address and achieve their sustainability and their ESG goals, but also maintaining a strong positive experience for their team members. So when you speak to clients and organizations who are really excited to adopt the circular IT model, just very briefly, what are some of the reasons that they look to Klyk to provide those services? Well, first of all, it's better for the team. It's a very straightforward service to onboard with. It's hassle-free. And we typically work with the likes of operations managers, HR managers, sustainability leads to offer our services. It's better for the business. And it absolutely gives that confidence that the devices that you're buying are supported, they're managed, and they're cyber secure. And we mentioned earlier, from a financial perspective, you can typically save 30 to 40% off your spend as a minimum by making more eco-conscious decisions and also getting that strong tech experience. And absolutely, it's better for the planet. So we provide carbon footprint measurement and also helping you to achieve your ESG ambitions, which can help to report to your team members, give a great reporting message to your investors and to your wider stakeholder community. So just as I conclude, our mission is all about giving tech a new life and making circular IT the new standard. Our vision and our mission is big, and we absolutely want to be positioned as that provider of choice. And something that we're very conscious to do is we very much recognize that this needs as a whole community support. So I look at the WIST community, I look at government and legislation and policy that's urgently needed to really make circular tech the new standard. And you also look at the big tech manufacturers, because everyone has a role to play. Because whilst the demand is very, very strong from the consumers and from businesses, it'll take a combined approach to make sure that we achieve the lofty mission that ourselves and others have.
Fantastic. Thank you so much. And that policy piece around driving this, I think, will be an interesting point for people to discuss in the Q&A. So thank you both, Zahid and Scott, for sharing that with us.